Attack on Titan, The Heart of Humanity. Cliff Baby Scene Analysis. Hello, Rei Caldombra here. No singular scene in recent memory has had such a strong effect on me as this one. I haven't cried that hard, and so many times more on repeated watching, from anything else I can think of. I believe this is the most emotionally powerful scene I have ever watched. This is the peak of beauty and raw emotion that can be conveyed through visual and auditory storytelling with a complete absence of dialogue. I wanted to put my intense feelings from watching the scene into words and how this scene displays the complexity of the human condition and many of Attack on Titan's themes. This baby represents the beating heart of humanity, the caring side of humanity beneath the selfishness that is shown when humanity is at its lowest. So there will be very heavy spoilers for the finale of Attack on Titan. To be clear on what I'm considering the cliff baby scene, I mean when the cliff is shown per the image that I'll show you in a second, or which you can see on the blog, which is linked in the description, and until the part on the cliff where the rumbling stops. So I'm considering these few separate cuts of this moment as one scene, which it really is. This is incredibly powerful in just around the minute and a half or so of that scene. There's so much conveyed in just like a minute and a half or so. So let's set the stage for what's going on in this moment. The rumbling was just activated by Eren. The colossals of the walls started marching across the earth, destroying everything in their path. We see the military, civilization, and people across the earth trampled under the feet of the colossals. This is truly hell on earth. One group of people running away from the Titans eventually end up at a cliff facing the ocean. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Stop moving and the colossals get closer, or keep moving and get closer to the cliff's edge. As this scene plays out, we see people pushing towards the cliff, with each person falling, bringing another with them. The crowd of people moving forward towards the cliff brings death to the ones in front of them, as they're forced off the cliff. This is similar to the crowd of Titans, the Colossals, doing the exact same thing. Both the Colossals and normal humans are trampling over each other's lives. And it's important to remember in this scene that all the Titans were once humans, even these ancient Colossals. Harkening back to the Season 3 opening, which I will do in a minute, even the Titans were shown with the bright red hearts. Despite the Colossals presently acting as a weapon to destroy humanity, they were humans too. Attack on Titan is a conflict of humans versus humans, and this scene is all about humanity. Most of the imagery in this scene has muted colors. All hope is lost, and people are acting out of pure desperation and fear, caught between death on all sides. As the Titan marches closer, we see a woman holding a baby. Everyone but the baby and the woman are muted in color. The mother has a normal color scheme but with a yellow hue over her. The baby, on the other hand, is distinctly wrapped in deep red fabric. So, the heart is a big motif in Attack on Titan. Some examples being the signature line, "Give me your heart," or Shinso Sasageo, the scout salute, putting your fist over your heart, and the Season 3 opening, as you can see now, the Season 3 opening emphasizing the bright red beating hearts of the scouts, the Titans, and all life. The baby is encased in red, like a beating heart. So as the mother falls off the cliff, the only color left in the scene is the baby. As the mother falls, a man with a mustache, as I'm referring to him, grabs the baby, saving it from falling. After grabbing the baby, we see his mouth move, likely yelling about saving the baby. We can only make assumptions about what he said, as reading the lips doesn't work here, and we do not hear it. But understanding his words isn't needed. We don't need to know what the man with the mustache said. His words don't even matter in universe. We know being close to the rumbling is near deafening from the scene of the rumbling first being activated. Maybe the next person to move the baby heard it, but no one else would have. And we never see anyone speak ever again in this scene. We just see the baby glide forward towards the center of the group, hand over hand, without a single break in movement. People saw the baby being moved and immediately acted, understanding what to do. The line of hands continued far from the man who would fall off the cliff himself minutes later. All those people moved the baby in unison without proper communication or coordination. And this continued for the rest of the time from then on until the rumbling stops. So we do not directly see the first man to grab the baby go down, but we see hands in the air move backward and downward as the camera pans upward towards the colossals. You can call him a hero if you want, but that did not save him. He definitely did not survive when you estimate the amount of time that between that happening and the rumbling stopping, and you don't see him in any of the surviving crowds. This is the cruelty of life that Attack on Titan often shows, which fits for this scene showing the extremes of the human experience. And I just have to say the sound design for this scene is very impactful, especially during this moment. All we hear is the sound is the sound of the crying of the baby along with the music as it gets moved forward towards the colossals and away from the cliff. The music is just absolutely phenomenal and sells the scene so much more. The baby being moved towards the center and away from the cliff means it's being moved closer to the colossals. They moved the baby in the belief that at least the child could escape the horrors in front of them for a moment longer, even if they were consigned to their own fates. They still clung to the desire to protect that baby's life as they marched closer to their own death. It's not like the whole group of people all just stopped moving. Those people kept pushing. All those, mainly adults here, are all still moving and pushing towards the cliff, to their death. They've recognized the powerlessness of the baby and wanted to protect it, even while not doing the same for the adults around them. The fear response may have led them to hurt other adults, but it does not transcend that desire to protect a baby. That desire to protect the young and helpless is stronger than fear. What can go above our selfish instincts of self-preservation is the instinct to protect our young. Humans have layers of compassion and selfishness, and I'll get more into that later. And I think it's very poignant that at the end of the first scene on the cliff, it has a pan upward that focuses on the colossals, reminding us that the baby is heading towards them, despite initially escaping death at the cliff. If the scene ended there, it would imply the baby cannot escape the towering threat of the rumbling. But it does not end there. It ends by focusing on the baby continuing to be held up by people, because that is the stronger power in this instance. It is the true heart of humanity that doesn't break down in the face of the rumbling. People's hope was not shattered the way buildings and landscapes were, even if it seemed that way. Because you cannot destroy humanity's hope for the future. Humanity's will continue moving forward. The baby itself is a symbol of the future, humanity carrying it forward despite all odds. Despite utter despair, they still clung to the hope of the future. And if they didn't believe in a better future, then that baby would be treated no differently than any other person there, who they were just pushing to their deaths. But it was different. In that moment, I doubt a person would have any deep rational thought. Protecting that baby was an innate instinct. This is humanity putting aside all their differences to protect a young and helpless person. Even in the face of certain death, these people united to save that baby. Even if they saw no future for themselves in that situation, they still acted to preserve the future of that child. So then it goes back to all the fighting, all the major plot stuff. And then we briefly come back to the cliff with the halting of the rumbling. Here we see the color return as the crisis ends. With the color returning, it is all the clearer how diverse the group of people are who have been by the cliff in age, sex, skin color, and clothing. There is no one group of people who are showing care for the baby more than others. We can also note that the yellow tinge that the mother had over her in the beginning is very similar to how all the people look once it's over. Maybe the mother being shown with normal colors initially is showing what the people would become once they successfully protected the baby as she did. Humanity's true colors are shown. We get the confirmation that the baby survived, along with many people. We see the people at the cliff's edge attempt to save those who were falling. This is also a positive representation of humanity, showing them helping each other once the crisis is averted. But this does not undercut the selfishness we just saw before then. Only once the crisis is seemingly at its end do we see adults helping other adults. This is the duality of humanity, selfish and caring. Depending on the situations, one side can come out more than the other. But I like to think of there being 3 layers to human behavior that we can glean from this scene and others. I'm not denying the validity of the duality argument, I just think there is strong evidence for this three-layered argument here. There's the outer layer of acting kind when it's easy and convenient. In the normal day-to-day, people are actually pretty kind to each other, either out of pure kindness and or to make themselves feel better, doing things like holding the door open for other people. Then there's the second layer, which is the selfishness shown by people in true distress. This is shown how, in the face of the rumbling, people will trample over each other in the pursuit of self-preservation for the moment. So many people will stop there when thinking about these types of concepts, but I'm not, and I believe this theory does not stop there either. The third layer is the true kindness that we see here with the protection of the baby, where self-preservation was prioritized below the baby. It could simply be the desire to protect your young, the biological ideas we see from Zeke. But I think there is more meaning than that. Armin makes his own argument against the purely biological idea, and I agree with these sentiments. I don't think it's accidental that the mustached man is shown to barely grab the baby without falling off when he first initially grabs it. Like, just look at the exacerbation on his face, the arching of his back, with his arm being fully outstretched. He barely managed to grab the baby. And he clearly put himself in danger by doing that. His instinct to stay away from the cliff was superseded by the instinct to protect the baby. To me, there is so much emotional weight to this scene that cannot be written off with just humans having instincts based on procreation. That argument also doesn't hold much weight when you consider that there are various animals that will actually sacrifice their young to protect themselves. This scene shows humans protecting a baby over themselves. Humans cannot be written off as just following animalistic behavior. That does a disservice to the complexity of the human condition, both the horrors and the beauty shown in human actions. Everything in the scene calls back to Mikasa's line of the world is cruel but also beautiful. This scene showcases the cruelty humans are capable of, humans pushing each other closer to death in order to try to save themselves. But amidst that selfishness is the beauty of an innocent baby being protected by those same people. Even at their worst, humanity still has empathy and the desire to protect in their heart. Even amongst the selfishness and raw fear on display of people shoving each other off cliffs to their deaths, they still protected that baby. That innate desire to protect a baby trumps their fear. Even if they view their deaths as unpreventable in that moment, they still protected the baby. This scene also hits on the running theme of succession that we see in Attack on Titan. We don't know for sure if the first woman holding the baby was the mother. She could have been, or she could have found it or been giving the baby off screen. There could have been many people before her who protected the baby, and there were many people who did so after. After she falls, we see the mustached man protected, who also falls shortly after. It then moves on to the many hands and ending with the bearded man. These people succeeded the ones who previously died protecting the baby. And there are many interpretations of Attack on Titan's themes and messages, in particular the perspective on humanity, which I've gotten into a bit. Regardless of your opinions, I think most can agree that the series tends to lean a bit more towards pessimistic than optimistic. Many people view the ending as bleak, and it portrays the unending cycle of human conflict. But this scene shows how it's not all bleakness about humanity from Attack on Titan. People fight each other, such as pushing people off cliffs. When in our darkest moments, people tend to act their truest. And in the horrible event that is the rumbling, people are pushing each other off cliffs. This suggests that at our core, we are selfish and self-serving. But while they continue to push each other off the cliff, they still raise that baby. These are the layers of humanity. The man with the mustache may have been the one to grab the baby from the falling woman, but he's not some lone hero amongst a bunch of selfish humans. This isn't some one of the good ones situation, in my opinion. This is not specifically about parenthood or biological women versus men, or anything like that in my eyes. It's also important to consider the point that there were no better or worse people here. That bald man was the one to pull down the woman holding the baby, which you could pick out as especially heinous. But everyone around the cliff, except the mother, was pushing and pulling at others. And you could argue, it's hard to tell from the scene, but you could argue that she likely was as well. He was pushed off himself by the woman in front of him. So is she actually the one to blame? What about the person who pushed her? How long would this string of thinking just keep going on? You could say it would end at Aaron, since he is the one who started the rumbling, but it's very clear from the story that the cycle of violence throughout history led to this. This cliff is a cycle. Aaron is not solely at fault, and his main reason for the rumbling was also to protect, same as the people here. In that case, it was his friends on Parody. There is no one person to blame for humanity's sins, another theme heavily touched on in Attack on Titan. All of humanity is guilty of the selfish harming of other humans, but still has the capacity to protect and care for other humans. In the face of the rumbling, many hands moved to push humans to their deaths, but also to protect the life of a baby. The baby represents the beating heart of humanity, the innocence and purity humans carry deep down, and the future that people strive to protect. Every person there had the capacity and the desire to protect that baby on instinct. All humans have that capacity to protect others and hold hope for the future, even in the worst situation imaginable. We must recognize and accept the horrible things humanity is capable of, but also the inner pureness that humanity has at its core, which drives them to protect others. So, I really hope my feelings came through with this. This is me literally putting my tears and strong emotions onto the page and hoping that it came out cohesive, really doing my best to try to come across that way. So I hope that I was able to succeed in putting into words how this scene causes such a powerful emotional reaction, how it did for me, and I know how it did for many others as well. If you have any strong thoughts on this scene or any thoughts at all, I'd really love to hear them. So thank you very much for listening. And to end this very heavy post on a fun fact, the baby was voiced by Yuki Kaji's baby, who is the Japanese voice actor for Eren.